I'm going to make some homemade deodorant, and I'm going to show you how to make it and how easy it is to make. Why do I make homemade deodorant? Because I like to know what's going inside and on my body. Using deodorants, there's a lot of dangerous chemicals, a lot of harsh ingredients that go into a lot of these beauty products, especially deodorants. And, going under the lymph nodes, I don't like it. We're going to start off first with the shells, okay? You can actually buy these shells. You can buy white shells, empty deodorant shells. They have the little screw bottom here. I like using the clear shells. I'm going to make 10 of these. I like to have them for family and friends, but I like to use the clear shells. And again, it has the screw bottom. And then what I buy are these inserts that you get, and you put these on top of the deodorant, which I'll show you when it's done, to protect it so it doesn't fall out of the container. And of course, there's the caps. Okay, so we have the white caps for the white container, which I'm showing you, and then the clear caps for the clear container, which I'm going to show you how those are. Those are all set up right here. This is a finished product, which I forgot I had. I thought I'd run out, but I did have this one here, and it's all filled up. They don't fill to the bottom. I don't know why, but some of these containers just don't go to the bottom. So even if you unwrap your deodorants, you're going to find that they don't often go to the bottom. So you really don't get a lot of product per se. But one of these here, this here will probably last me close to 3 weeks. Okay, so what's next? The cool thing about homemade deodorant is that there are just 5 simple ingredients. Just five simple ingredients for deodorant. Okay, so let me show you what those are. We have coconut oil, preferably organic. It creates sort of a smooth texture under the arms. Baking soda is ingredient number 2. So this is baking soda, which is good for odors and different things, and it absorbs a lot of moisture. And so does cornstarch. So the third ingredient is cornstarch. So the cornstarch, you use that to stiffen up, soups and gravies and different things, right? But cornstarch actually helps absorb a lot of the moisture as well. So the combination between these 2 items here absorb the moisture under your arms. This more or less kind of lubricates underneath your arms and does provide some kind of protection. Now, to bind this stuff together would be ingredient number 4, which is beeswax. Okay, so try to use, again, organic beeswax. Very little bit of beeswax. It doesn't take a lot, just a little bit to kind of hold it together. If you use too much beeswax, you're going to end up with deodorant that's way too stiff, and it'll hurt your underarms. And if you have underarm hair, it'll rip the hair right out. So you got to be careful with that. And then finally, ingredient number 5 is optional. You don't have to do this. I like to do it, but I like to add a scent. In this particular case, I'm using a tangerine essential oil. And you can use all kinds of essential oils. I mean, my sister and I used to make it with rose oil. It smells really, really nice under the arms. But it depends. I have pine scent that I've used. Many different choices with essential oil. That's the other thing I like about making my own homemade products, especially deodorant, is that you can pick and choose. So let's get started. So what you're going to do first is you're going to use your stove, and you're going to get a good sized pot, depending on how many you make. I mean, you may decide to make a couple. I'm making 10, so I'm going to fill this up probably about halfway with all of my materials. And it's important that you turn the stove on, not high. You want it to sort of be not medium, but sort of in between medium and high. Okay, because you don't want to scorch your materials. So the first ingredient I'm going to add is the coconut oil. But I'm putting approximately 1 cup of coconut oil in. Okay, and this is for one batch. So I do 1 cup of coconut oil, like so. Okay, and you're going to notice that it's going to slowly start to melt. So you're going to work with the coconut oil first and get this to melt down as much as possible. But now, since I'm going to double or even triple this, so I fill my 10 containers, I'm actually going to be doing about 3 cups of coconut oil. So I'm going to scoop this out. And normally I'd measure it. Normally I'd pack it into a 1 cup measuring cup. Okay. But since I know how many spoonfuls, and I've done this so many times, I know how much to put in here. I'll show you that. So that's about 3 cups of coconut oil. And we're going to reduce this down to its liquid form as best as we can. It doesn't have to melt completely, and I'll show you why next. Since I am tripling the batch, I have melted down the coconut oil to its liquid form. Okay, if you have a few chunks in there. What's next is I'm going to add the beeswax. Okay, so I have this beeswax here, this organic beeswax, and the general rule of thumb when I'm putting this together is about half a teaspoon for my 3 or 4 containers full. Okay, so what I do, since I know I'm going to be tripling it, is this here breaks up to be about 6 teaspoons. Okay, this block. So I'm actually going to be probably about half of this, okay? So I'm going to use about half of this, and you know, you got to be careful you don't cut your fingers. So what I end up doing, I go to a cutting board, and I will chop this up into pieces. Now, knowing that I'm going to use this, about half of this, is I'll make a cut, and again, be careful because you can cut yourself pretty easy on this beeswax because it's pretty hard. So I cut that in half like so. And again, this is triple. So normally it'd be like 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 pieces. So I'm going to take half of this stick and I'm going to put it right here inside the coconut oil. And this is important. It's important to actually let this melt. Sometimes I actually take the spoon and press down on it, kind of move it around on the warm pan on the bottom, and make sure that the wax, the beeswax, melts into the coconut oil. That's going to be really, really important. You don't want to get any hard pieces of beeswax in your deodorant because that does stick. It's really hard and it pulls on your hair and stuff. So we want to melt that down as best we can. Stir it around, and again, make sure that this is on gentle heat, sort of in the middle, between middle and high. If it starts to smoke, you want to turn it down a little bit. But be gentle, be slow with it. Take your time with it and just make sure that this is all melted down. This is the liquid portion. Okay? We'll let that melt down a little bit. Okay, so what's up next now is I'm going to use the tangerine essential oils. Okay, I'm going to drop this in, and each 2 to 3 or 4 containers I do, I use about 20 drops of the essential oil. So what I'm going to do is, now that we have this liquid, now that we have all this liquid melted down, the beeswax is now melted into the coconut oil, which is good, is now we're going to add the essential oil. And usually it comes with a little dropper top, okay? And sometimes it comes with a squeeze dropper, but in this case here, we're basically going to do, remember I do 20 per, so roughly, I want to say 60 drops, but you're going to have to keep an eye on it because you don't want it to over smell too. So I'm going to be dropping in roughly 50. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 47, 48, 49, and 50. And you can be approximate. You don't have to panic if you do 52 or whatever. And what you do is you stir up gently. And then you literally be careful you don't burn your nose, but you stick your nose in here and kind of smell it. And if it smells good to you, then it's probably going to be good to go. You don't want to over scent it. You don't ever want to put too many drops, too much essential oil in your deodorant because you don't want to really smell into your arms. You just want it to smell nice, right? So I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm going to add a few more drops to it. And again, it's approximate. It's kind of like cooking. Okay. Okay, now you mix that up. And now, this is important. Now that that's all mixed together, you have the essential oil, you have the coconut oil, and you have the beeswax. You have the 3 main ingredients mixed together. Is I'm going to turn this down now, okay, to low, because we don't want it to boil. So what's next? Next we're going to do the baking soda. And this here, I'm going to measure this out. Okay, I'm going to pour a cup of baking soda. This is probably going to be 2 cups. 2 cups. We're going to start with 2 cups. I'll show you why. So we're going to start with 2 cups of baking soda, and I'm going to pour this in here. Okay. And then I'm going to do another cup. If any spills in the pot, that's okay. There's another cup. Okay, you're going to notice that it's going to start looking like it's boiling. Okay, and if it's doing that, we want it off the heat. So I'm going to scoop that over here now. And it's actually also reacting to the oils. So we're going to stir in the baking soda. You got to make sure to take your time and stir it up real nice. Really mix that up. Okay, and it's still very liquidy, and we're going to add the cornstarch too, don't forget. Okay, but I'm going to add one more cup of the baking soda. So let's add one more cup of the baking soda. And again, it's okay if it spills into the pot a little bit. It's not a precise science, it's like cooking. Okay, so we're going to add the third We're going to add the third baking soda. And we're stirring it up. And see how it's thickening up a little bit. That's good. Kind of saucy, like thick sauce. It's like thick sauce, and it smells like oranges, which is good. What I want. You can add your essential oil any way you want it. Okay, now it's thickening up and it's kind of gooey. So now we're going to add the cornstarch. Okay, so now remember the formula is half of the baking soda will be the cornstarch. So we used about 3 cups of baking soda. So we want to use half of that for cornstarch, which is about 1.5 cups. Okay, so we're going to add 1.5 cups here. Add a cup. And a half. Again, it's okay if a little more spills in. So that's 1.5 cups of cornstarch. And yes, now it gets a little messy. So make sure you're prepared for a little bit of a mess. So that's 1.5 cups of that. Remember, it's off the heat now. And now we're going to stir this together. And what you're looking for is the consistency of like a nice, thick, gooey frosting, like a cake frosting. Okay, so see I'm stirring this up and it's still a little bit on the watery side. Okay? So this is what I meant by it's not a precise science, especially when you scale it up and you're trying to make a lot of containers. In my case, I'm doing 10 containers. Okay, and you're also going to notice that you might have lumps, just like gravy lumps. And all you're doing is stirring that, and I use the back of the spoon against the pan, much like gravy. You can actually use a whisk if you want to help break it up. But I just get in here and I start stirring it up. Now, since it's so liquefied, I'm going to go back in now, just like a cook, just like a chef. And you're going to, by hand, you're going to add a little more baking soda. A little bit at a time. Don't overdo it. So a little more baking soda. A little more cornstarch. Remember, a little bit at a time. I might add a little bit more scent. Just a little. And you're going to mix it up. Again, a little bit at a time, just like cooking, just like making gravy or sauce or soup or whatever. Take your time, go nice and slow. Now, if it starts to thicken up and harden up a little too much, we can actually put it back on the heat. Actually, that reminds me. To turn the heat off. We don't want to keep that on. Okay, so we're going to stir this up. You're going to notice little bumps. You're going to see like little orange flecks there from the scent. And just go against the pan with the back of your spoon. Okay, and that helps break up all the little pieces here too. I'm pushing little chunks. Make sure you scrape the sides of the pan. Go back and forth across the pan. And make sure you're really stirring it up. Sometimes I actually tilt the pan and actually come around in circles up top, but you don't have to do that. Just make sure you stir it up nice, okay? And you're looking for a nice smooth consistency, a nice smooth texture. And again, it's still a little on the runny side, which isn't terrible because actually it's going to harden up. Okay, that's important to understand. Let's take a look at the coconut oil. See, it's all very hardened in the container. That's going to happen to your deodorant, especially adding baking soda and cornstarch. It's all going to harden once it cools. So the trick is getting the right texture, the right consistency. And my favorite consistency is going to be kind of like this, kind of like a real thick, gooey frosting kind of texture, okay? And you're looking for it to be as lumpless as possible, because then when you put it on under your arms, you want it to be nice and smooth. Okay, so stirring it up as best you can. And once you're happy with stirring it, which I am now, it's actually looking pretty good. You don't have to worry about the edges having stuff on it and all that. We're actually ready now to gently and carefully take it off the heat, and we're going to go over here to our shells, and we're going to start filling up the shells. So we're going to do that very carefully, and I usually line them up like this because it's very easy to do when you line them up. And I literally, since it's in liquid form, I actually start to pour in very carefully, almost to the top, like that. And then I go to the next one. And then I go to the next one. And don't worry too much about spilling over. It's okay if that happens. You might find a few lumps that flop in. That's okay too. If you find lumps inside of it like this, just go right back to your pan. I'm sorry, your stovetop. Go back to your stovetop and just stir it up a little bit more. It's okay to do that. Actually, easier to see once you pour it out. Okay, so remember, this is 3 cups of baking soda to, actually it turned out to be almost 4 cups of baking soda to almost 3 of the cornstarch. So now I'm going to go back and continue to fill the shells. Just go very easy and gentle. Even better if you let it kind of cool off a little bit. Easier to work with. I'm filling this up. A couple of lumps plopping in, but that's okay. And fill the containers up. And last but not least, we have the white container. Pull that up here. Now, sometimes what happens as you add more is you end up with a little bit more product. So that tells me that I'm going to put the pan down, and I'm going to actually get a couple more shells. Okay. All right, so let's set up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's set up 5 more shells. Now we have 5 more shells. We're going to pour the rest of the product into the remaining 5 shells. I might have enough actually to make more than 5 shells, but let's see what we got here. Almost to the top, just in case it spills over. Okay, actually this might be perfect. This might be perfect. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. So the next step is letting them cool. Once they're all poured in the containers, you want to let these cool, because if you try moving them around, they're first of all very warm, very hot, and the liquid will actually pour out. So we want to let that cool, and it depends on how long you let them cool and the environment that they're cooling in. Somewhere about an hour or so. Sometimes I put them on a tray and put them in the refrigerator or put them outside in the cold. But let's let these suckers cool down. They're all in their shells, and although they've cooled down, we want to let them continue to cool down. So this is where we're going to take our caps, our tops, and we're going to put them on the top here, like so. And that's going to prevent anything from spilling over. We really don't need them. I mean, I'm going to be storing these in a cool place in the house anyway, but just in case I give them to a friend or family, nothing spills out of that. And then we take the caps and we put that on there carefully, like so. And there we have it. I mean, that's pretty much it in a nutshell, the deodorant. So again, I'm going to let these cool. I finished putting all of these caps on. And back when my sister and I sold more of these, we would put labels on them and, you know, arrange shipping and all that. But these again are for friends and family, certainly for personal use. And that's it. So I'm going to cap them all and store them in a nice cool place. So there we have it, the final products. We have about 14 of these that we made out of that batch, and there's going to be plenty here for me to last a long time, and certainly enough to share with family and friends. You basically take the cap off, take the protective plastic covering off, and there you have it, really soft coconut oil. So that's it. That's how you make homemade deodorant with only 5 ingredients. Safe, homemade deodorant. There's nothing better. Okay, so the general breakdown of 4 to 5 units of deodorant, which means 4 to 5 of these containers, is approximately 50% will be baking soda. Okay, so it's 2 cups of baking soda. It'll be 1 cup of coconut oil. So basically it's split in half. 50% baking soda, and then the other 50% is coconut oil and cornstarch. So we have 2 cups of baking soda, 1 cup of coconut oil, and 1 cup of starch. And the only other ingredients in this 5 recipe deodorant is half a teaspoon of organic beeswax, and then 20 drops of essential oil. Now in the mixture that I made, it's food grade tangerine oil drops. And again, that makes 4 to 5 units. So if you're gonna, you know, up your number of deodorant units, you're obviously, so I doubled it, almost tripled it, so I'd almost double or triple this amount here. And it changes a little bit. It's just like cooking food. So, you know, as you're mixing it, like I showed in the video, you may want to change some of this, but this is the basic premise behind all natural homemade deodorant.